Hi guys, we have been in the hotel room mainly for about the past 3 days now because we lost our camera and the thieves probably know where we're staying at. They also have our photos. How exciting! Anyway, this is going to be a vlog where we talk about our experiences as a couple of food tourists for 3 weeks in Italy, mainly in Rome, a couple of days in Palermo and Noto. We'll talk about the details of the theft and the elaborate scheme towards the end of our video, so if you're here specifically for that, just navigate the timestamps down below and get to that specific section. Without further ado, let us start talking about Rome first. We'll talk about their food. There are a few things that you absolutely must try: pasta, pizza and gelato.
And for the traditional Roman pasta, you have to try cacio e pepe, carbonara, and amatriciana.
And another one called Gricia, I think, or Gricia, I'm not sure. I think this is the place where you come to learn what is true al dente. Al dente is just this very magical texture where it's slightly, in a way, undercooked, and there's a beautiful snap and chew to it. Not every shop does it well.
Yeah.
But the proper shops, the really good ones, immediately you can tell. You will like that texture.
Yeah, and also you have to try their fresh pasta.
Yes.
Because the fresh pasta, they have a beautiful bite and chew.
And I think the myth of dry pasta is worse, fresh pasta is better is absolute bollocks. Basically, they have their own uses. It all depends on the particular sauce it's going with. I think Roman pasta is a dish that really highlights the importance of really good ingredients. Because the recipe is so bare bones simple that the ingredients play 70% of the part. And this is where I think I want to draw a point of the general pasta shops in Rome. They are okay to decent, but a lot of them are not great, I'll be honest. You wouldn't be mind blown unless you visit the really good ones. I think a prime example would be Luciano. Luciano is the spot that we could recommend strongly in Rome. I think they are the best in cacio e pepe, carbonara, and even amatriciana. But Luciano is not very consistent. Honestly, they are not consistent. We have been there 4 times, and the first time it was it was good, but it was like very muted. So that's why we went the second time, and then we eventually filmed. All the rest of the times they were good. When they are on form, they have the best amatriciana. We have tried the best cacio e pepe and the best carbonara. So do try out their pasta. I think you will have a very interesting experience here, especially with the good restaurants.
Now onto the pizza. I would suggest you guys to try the traditional Roman pizza, pizza al taglia.
Which means by the slice.
Yeah, generally the pizza here is okay to us.
Yeah, this is a very personal opinion, but we think it's, I mean, of course it's definitely better than Malaysian pizza, but it's a very difficult thing to master because it's also very simple ingredients. It depends a lot on your dough. If you have a right dough texture and fragrance, you won half the battle.
Yeah.
And a lot of the pizza shops here, it's okay lah.
It's okay lah.
Yeah, it's okay to decent lah.
Yeah, and we have tried ponchi. Ponchi is very good, but also inconsistent.
Yeah, ponchi is good. Beautiful crust. They do have a very decent flour fragrance on their pizza base, the crust. The topping is interesting and good quality, but like what I mentioned, it's really inconsistent. And it really depends on what topping you choose.
Yeah.
It could be to wow. Yeah, it's a pretty large band. Yeah. And I think one other pizza you can try here, although it's not Roman in origin, is Neapolitan pizza. And the spot I think we could recommend is Sao Illuminati. It's basically Neapolitan mainly, with more innovative toppings. Very creative and very well balanced, but it might not have that much of a dough fragrance. So do try out our pizzas. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah. For gelato, actually mostly the shop we felt it's more like ice cream than gelato.
Yeah, I mean, again, very personal, but it's also very honest. When we read about gelato, it was like, wow, gelato is this insanely, rich textured, beautiful, amazing tasting, It's like, it's just different from ice cream. We tried a lot of the famous ones. I'm going to be very honest, most of them taste like ice cream with a better texture. It's rich, it's heavy, it's sweet, and it bogs you down. Even your famous ones like Vanci, known for their Bronte pistachio, Jolliti,
the old shop.
Yeah, and what else?
Like
the gelato spelled backwards. There's some people claim,
Otale.
Otale, people claim it's the best. Personally, we felt that it's also oversweet. It's like you could immediately tell the sugar is really a lot. And all of them, you end up with dry mouth after you finish your gelato. It really feels like ice cream, a richer ice cream.
Yep.
Aside from one shop, which fares better in general, Gracchi. For us, Gracchi feels really more like the gelato that people talk about. Again, same mouth texture. It has a rich, silky, smooth, creamy mouth texture. But the natural flavor of the ingredients presents itself more. It's not overly sweet in general. And after you finish, you do feel sort of refreshed. You don't really feel like, oh, my mouth is dry, I feel bogged down. But of course, again, very, very honestly, the best gelato we had is not in Rome. It's in Noto from Cafe Sicilia. Those of you who have seen the episode would have known. I'm not saying gelato is bad, by the way, guys. Don't get me wrong. It's good. Just don't expect it to be like significantly different from any high quality ice cream that you have back home.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. I do want to mention about Michelin star restaurants in Rome. I think if you have the budget, you should try. There are actually not that many Michelin star restaurants in Rome comparative to Paris. Paris has like every few streets you get one. Over here, I think there's only 1 3-star, 1 2-star, maybe about, I think, 18 1-stars.
1-star.
We did try a 2-star called Il Pagliaccio, I think. It means the clown.
The clown.
We will talk about it in detail in our Instagram exclusive. But if I were to give a word of advice here, personal again, if you really have the budget and you are used to eating Michelin star restaurants, by all means go and try it out. It's an interesting play on Italian food with very wide spectrum of Asian flavors. But for those of you who have sort of like a limited budget, you want to try a 2-star restaurant, I wouldn't suggest trying it here in Rome. Because it's all over the place. Let me explain. It is a 2 Michelin star restaurant. It does feel like a 2 Michelin star. After we finish the food, everything is executed beautifully. But the theme of the meal is called the circus. And only the first dish, the starter, and the final dessert, I think, felt like part of the theme.
The rest.
Everything in between is like a lot of individually very well executed dishes. There are Asian fusion dishes, but they're like headless chickens running around the dining room. It feels in Chinese, this might sound very bad, I might need to cut this out, but I will say this first. In Chinese, it feels 不伦不类.
不上不下.
不伦不类.
Okay.
It's like all over the place, which is why if you have a limited budget, I think it's better you go for the 1 Michelin star ones. If you can get the 3-star, definitely. We couldn't get it, there's no slot. Go for the 1-star ones. Quite a few of them are actually pretty good, and it's more Italian based, right? Like the one that we filmed, Pipero, it's more Mediterranean, but ultimately it's still Italian. Fantastic carbonara. It's definitely the best together with Luciano. They are the best carbonara. Pipero is traditional carbonara, done right. And the other one I think is Al Oro, I would recommend. I think it's probably the most impressive 1-star that we have tried here.
Yeah.
The starters again, beautiful. And a lot of very innovative ways of doing the dishes. They are all Italian. Al Oro I think is the most traditionally Italian dishes. They are done with a twist. Like their tiramisu that doesn't look like a tiramisu. Cod fish with potato foam that looks like a tiramisu. Yeah, so these two are the restaurants that I think I would strongly recommend. They do correspond with the star that they got. Like, it's quite good. And the price point is not as expensive as Paris. It's 125 euros to 140 euros per pax. Yeah, we didn't try that many, but we have tried like 3 of them lah, and we are quite satisfied.
Now let's move to Noto, our favorite Cafe Sicilia.
Yep. I think Noto is a place where throughout this trip, that was the best overall food experience for us.
Yeah.
Mainly because of Cafe Sicilia. Okay, let's talk about Cafe Sicilia first. It's crazy, it's a cafe, but I'll call it a patisserie. And basically I'll place it in the stratosphere of the god tier Parisian patisseries like Cedric Gollet, Karl Maletti. It's in that tier, they're in the same level.
And you must try their almond granita with brioche.
This is insane, you must have it. And let's talk about gelato. Also, you must have it. It's just on a class of its own. We have never had a gelato that fits the description of all the blogs. You know, all the blogs that write about the way a gelato should be. They are basically talking about Cafe Sicilia. No other shop, not even Gracchi comes close to that.
Yeah.
Not even Gracchi comes close to that. As natural and as refreshing as you can get. Even the dark chocolate does not bog you down, and it is just as rich.
Yes.
Their pastries, we didn't try everything, but I believe all of them are good. Yeah. Some of them will be crazy good. After you have their cannolo, after you have their casatina, which is basically cassata, I think you'll be hard pressed to find anything that is better or even comes close to it.
Yeah.
If you are going to Sicily,
Drop
you
by.
must detour to Noto. You must. If you do not do that, you are doing yourself a disservice and you cannot call yourself a foodie. Really, you must go. I rarely push a place so much, but yeah, I'm doing it right now. And I want to talk about the pizza. Actually, our best pizza is not Sao Illuminati. It's actually Casamata. They each have their pros and cons, but personally, we felt Casamata won because of the dough fragrance. It's good. Not fantastically good, but it's good. And we have not been to Naples, so we'll talk about it again when we get to Naples.
Yeah. And also they do have a very good Sicily pizza in a panificio maida.
Yes. It's basically like bonci. It's like by slice, but it's Sicilian. They have focaccia, they have spincione and scaccia.
Yeah.
When we had maida, it was cold, but it is still ridiculously flavorful and the fragrance is there. We have only had it once, so we don't know whether it's consistent. But if it is this consistent, then it will beat bonci by way of consistency.
Simple yet delicious.
Yeah, which is why I love Noto. It's
Yeah.
like,
We are very surprised.
yeah, the 3 spots that we tried out, my god, crazy. Okay, now on to the next spot.
Palermo. It's a very happening city compared with Noto.
Yeah, and even Rome, I think, quite happening.
But it's
Okay, first of all, I think we have to qualify this. We were only there for 24 hours, so we really didn't get to properly explore. And Palermo is a really huge city. It's not like Noto, it's not that small. We did visit a few spots that the blogs recommend or YouTube channels recommend.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we do not know where to find the good food spots. But the only thing that really left a deep impression was the cow
In the
eaters
market,
sandwich in the market. That was a street food that was done really quite well.
Yep.
Very good experience touring the markets. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the food,
It's edible.
it's edible, it won't kill you. Maybe we only went to the touristy spots, so it feels very touristy. So we can't really comment much about Palermo.
Okay, food is done. So let's talk about general in Italy.
Mainly in Rome, I would say. Because we arrived end of May, so it's like moving to summer. And it's really hot. The sun will kill you, basically. Put on sunscreen. The first few days I was in Rome, the rashes are insane. And I started putting on sunscreen more diligently. and now I think hopefully it's just darker, but not, really bad. I think the other thing is if you walk a lot. Let's talk about the walkways in Rome. It's really bad. Personally, it's really bad. Let's talk about why it's really bad first. I think give the audience some context. The road is not just uneven. Basically, there are holes all over the place, and there will be suddenly small parts sticking out, small dent. The curb are not uniform.
So you have to keep your eyes to look at
You have to keep your eyes literally on the road because the road will and can kill you. I have seen tourists, I have seen locals, they trip. And I myself, on the first day in Rome, in Vatican area, I fell. I wasn't running, I was literally normal walking. I fell and I scraped my knee, there was blood. It scraped past my pair of jeans. Of course, maybe I'm an idiot, I don't know how to walk, I don't know. But in Paris, it was not this bad. Never tripped in Paris, never fell. Didn't have to, we still look at the road, but we didn't have to stare at the road. In Italy, we stare at the road. And quite has got a few really close calls.
Yeah.
The road is bad. The road is really bad in our experience. Personal. So if you walk a lot, get a really good pair of shoes, be really careful when you're walking because the walkways are also very, very narrow. Yeah, be really careful, just be really careful.
And also be careful another natural disaster, bird poop.
Yeah.
It can happen frequently.
Bird droppings. Throughout the trip, I got it twice.
Yep.
And that was also partly the reason why we lost our camera. It was part of the reason. We explained later, but bird dropping was one of the reasons.
Yeah. And language also is a problem. If you don't know Italian, there might be a difficulty
there
for
is
you.
a lot of difficulty dealing with authorities or dealing with government bodies. Like when we were taking our train trip, people who work there, they barely speak any English, and all the signboards don't show any English. And of course, when the theft happened, when we went to the police station, they don't use English at all. They maybe know 3 to 5 words, and we had to literally Google Translate, and they Google Translate back to us. That was how we communicated. Yeah. So if you know some Italian or you have an Italian tour guide or friend, it makes things a lot easier, especially if you are traveling from place to place. Yeah.
Let's talk about last point, cost.
Yeah, high. But not as high as Paris. I think this applies more for Malaysians lah. Because again, ringgit is 1/5 of the euro. A general trattoria or restaurant, one pasta, one dessert.
Maybe 20 euro.
Yeah, maybe 20 euro for the cheaper ones.
Yeah.
And then for the better ones, you can go up to 30-35 euros. The really good ones are the ones that taste good.
Yep.
Accommodation is also expensive,
Yeah.
depending on where you live. Again, not as expensive as Paris, like this hotel.
It's slightly cheaper than...
Slightly cheaper than Paris, but it is in closer to city center. It's closer to the Pantheon, Trevi Fountains and all that. So I think it's cheaper lah. It's cheaper lah compared to Paris. But I think you can tell is, it's not the best, and also security is an issue. I think that is about all for the general thoughts of Italy, mainly Rome. Let's talk about the theft. Okay, what happened was it was a Sunday and it was in the morning, I think it was 11. We were actually on our way to a restaurant called Glass Hostaria. We intended to film there. And while we were walking, we were filming along the way, for transition. And we were passing by Piazza Venezia, very touristy area. As I was walking, I suddenly saw this drawing or painting on the wall of a building. I told her, I said, hey, I'm going to film that. Quite was actually behind. She was the one who is on the lookout. But she was also holding the map for us to walk to Glass Hostaria.
I just looked down for the map. Just like 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
Then after I looked up, I saw his clothes, the behind, the back.
There's like a whole blotch of a lot of bird droppings.
Yep.
Literally, it's like one spot and then it's like literally like it came from the sky. And when I was here, I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
So she was looking and I noticed she had a lot of these similar bird dropping things on her back too. And because we have gotten bird droppings before, and this thing really looked sort of like bird dropping, so we were like, how did we not notice? Like, could it be a bunch of birds that just flew past and they just decided to drop bombs on us? It just didn't occur to us that this could be man-made.
Yeah.
So our idea was, let's go to the nearest supermarket and buy some wet wipes. 2 streets across, there's this Pam Local. It's a convenience store supermarket thing. And they had some tissues for free, so we were actually starting off wiping down with the tissues. So Quet was wiping down the bag, and a man dressed in a very proper business attire.
Yeah.
He came to us, very friendly guy with mustache, skinny guy. He came in, he very friendly, he told us in sort of like broken English with some Italian. He's like, there's a lot of fountains outside, I can bring you there, there's water, it's easier for you to clean. And because we know people like that, they come, we are sort of like, maybe he's trying to get us to go outside and then he wants to, rob us or steal our things. So we told him very nicely, we said, no, it's okay, we got it. So he left. Actually, Craig was asking me, do we want to do it outside? But I told her, no, I think it's safer in the supermarket. So we stayed in the supermarket and we started wiping with the wet wipes. We stayed at a corner. Actually, a lot of people were in the supermarket as well. So we felt safe. Obviously, it's not true. And I was still holding on to my camera. The camera is basically on my hand. And suddenly, right behind us, this guy dropped, this bald man dropped his keys. We heard like clang. He spoke in Italian. He was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then he saw Quet's skirt and he took out a tissue very quickly and he was like pointing at the skirt non-stop and then talking. And he suddenly rushed, like very quickly moved towards Quet like he's going to touch her with the tissue. Like he wants to wipe her legs and her back, the behind. But this is where I made the most crucial mistake. I don't know why. I really don't know why. It's very stupid. I admit it, it's very stupid. I put down the camera, I stepped forward, because Quet was actually just right beside. I stepped forward to block the man. The man, Quet is here. The man is here. I stepped here to stop him. The man just went like this. He was still talking, and then he went like this, and he just walked away. And I turned back immediately. My camera is gone. The camera is gone. 3 seconds. And my first thought is, shit, we have been conned. My first thought in my mind was that the guy might not have left. The person who took the camera might not have left. So I told Craig, I said, you stay here. I wanted to chase the guy in case he somehow managed to grab onto the camera. Maybe the accomplice passed back to him. I actually managed to catch up to the guy. He didn't run. I told him, I said, look, I know you took my camera. Show me your bag. He was having this like a sling bag which can fit our camera. And he just nonchalantly, looked at his watch for a while and then he opened up the bag and I noticed that there's nothing there. And this is where I made, again, I think another mistake. It didn't occur to me to take out my camera to film him or to grab onto him or take his photo. Because if I did that, there might be a better chance in recovering the camera. And that was when, because Quet didn't understand, maybe I think she panicked, right? You were worried.
Yeah, because you are on the...
I was chasing the guy.
Yeah, then because we are not local, so maybe the man will be Like,
maybe he set a trap for me, and if I chase him to the alleyway, he might rob me. So I think Quack was worried. She actually ran out from the supermarket. I told Quack, quickly go back to the supermarket, and then I chased Quack back. So that's the mistake. So the man continued walking. He literally just continued walking away. When we were rushing back, I already saw quite a few people leaving the shop. And in my mind, I was thinking, if the guy was in the shop, he would have left right behind Quack. So actually, I was like, I think it's more or less 99.9% the camera is gone now. But we still went back and we told the staff there, and of course this is a very isolated incident. I'm not saying everyone in Rome is like this. I'm not saying every staff in Rome is like this. I'm just saying this particular pan local, the staff acted like nothing's wrong. And they continue serving their customers and in a way ignoring us.
Yeah.
And we told them that we lost our camera, it was stolen in their shop. And they just sort of like, gave us half-ass answers and sort of like,
Yeah.
And luckily there was this very nice lady, she's not an Italian, but she knows some Italian, and she actually spoke to them in Italian and tried to get them to let us see the CCTV, because in Pam Local there's CCTV, right? And this is, I think it's I'll call it lame outright lah, to be honest. They told us that today is a Sunday, you cannot watch the CCTV because my boss is not here. I'm not going to call him. You have to come back tomorrow if you want to watch the CCTV. And they didn't even ask us to report to the police or anything. They didn't assist us in any way. They were totally useless. I'm going to be very honest. Totally useless. It was the non-Italian lady who tried to help us.
Yep.
So we went to the nearest carabinieri or something. We filed the first police report. The experience goes like this. You go in, there's a lady inside.
Yep.
And I don't know, maybe we were interrupting her lunch. I don't know. She was really pissed for whatever reason.
Yeah, because that time she is waiting the food delivery.
Oh, is it? She is? Okay,
is.
so basically she's pissed and she just handed us a piece of paper and she said, fill it. So we filled everything and we handed it back to her. And I think Quite asked her like, so what do we do now? Like, is there a follow-up or whatnot?
Yep.
And she very outright just said, it's done.
Finished.
The police here is done. Nothing. No, done. And we were sort of like,
Shocked.
okay.
Yeah, so shocked.
Because we were late, we actually called the glass hostara and told them that we might not make it. But in the end, after filing the report, we are like, what else can we do? It's not like we can find back the camera now. So we went back and actually the staff spoke to us and asked us, so how did it go? What happened? And actually the staff told us, he said, no, it should not be like this. You should go to the headquarters, make it a news. I think it means you should,
make a report.
He actually was very nice. He wrote the address for us and he even wrote down exactly what happens. He told us just pass it to the police in the police station. They will read it. He even gave us his number. He said if the police don't understand, just ask them to call me. So thank you very much to the kind man in Glass Hostaria. So we walked to the
police station,
which is actually very near to our hotel, like behind.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, it's a Sunday. Let me tell you this. We went there, there is policemen, it's open. We said we want to make a police report. We handed them the paper and they read it and they told us, oh, the report department is not open today. So they directed us to another police station 15 minutes away. And that police station said, we can't do it today because we're doing this disinfection. So he directed us to another police station, again further away, 15-20 minutes. So again, we were like, okay, fine. We walked 20 minutes to the other police station and they were like, we are not open today, it's Sunday. There's police inside, by the way. They are open. They just say that you cannot do it, it's a Sunday. Yeah. It's Sunday, it's common. It's like this, it's a Sunday. The feeling I get from the police stations that I visited seems that if you want to commit a crime, do it on a Sunday because you have a 24-hour lead. The police only starts working on Monday because we can't even file a police report. Yeah. This is what we have encountered and it's all facts. I didn't add anything, I didn't subtract anything. So what happened was the next day, which was on Monday, we went back to the headquarters and they nearly didn't want to take us in. Yeah, he actually tried to push us to our police station and we told him that the exact same thing happened yesterday. Eventually, they got a person who is willing to take the report and then we started the process. And it's actually surprisingly, it's a pretty long process because the police do not speak English at all. Yeah. And apparently, I read online, if you make a police report, if you don't file it in Italian, it will take months before they even read your report because apparently they have to send it for translation. So this man was very nice. We actually used Google Translate to converse and tell him exactly what happened and he typed out the report. So it took nearly 2 hours. I'm very thankful for him because I know he gets off at 4 p.m. But by the time he finished, it was nearing 6. So ultimately what this has taught us is, I know it's not very good to tell people this, but this is what I will do from now on. Don't be nice, especially in Europe. Don't be nice. I finally understood why a lot of people in Rome have this straight face and they are actually generally very rude. It's probably so that, they don't get targeted. The reason why it happened is because I was not rude enough. When the guy dropped the key and he was taking out his tissue, we were like, oh no, it's okay, you don't have to. We were soft, we were too nice. I really think we were too nice. So after this incident, we discussed, and I told Quay, I said, it's better to be rude and not lose anything. And okay, the reason why we are staying in the hotel and we don't dare to go out now is because on that day, I have already filmed some footages of the hotel, so they know where we stay. And we also took some photos of Quay, so they know what Quay looks like. They could just circulate this around to their other accomplices and, you know. And the thing about the hotel, this hotel, is that the security is just outright bad lah. You know, generally when you go to these hotels, whether it's old or new, you have the first security is your main entrance, or you have to scan your card at the lift. They don't have any of this. The only security you get is your wooden door of your room, and you cannot even lock it from the inside.
So it felt very unsafe.
How are we able to go out? So in fact, you will have noticed we didn't film Coliseum because Coliseum was actually scheduled after our camera got stolen. We actually cut an episode.
So we found our ticket.
Were we not careful enough? Did we make mistakes? Yes, we made huge mistakes. But were we not diligent in this trip? No. I think we were very diligent. Let me put it this way, when you are out and you are filming on a daily basis, you get to focus on the angle of the shot. Are things in focus and whatnot? There will be moments and pockets of weakness.
Unless you have another pair of eyes.
Yeah, or unless you have a third person helping you, I don't know. This just happens to be one of those moments of weakness, and it costs us a lot. It literally doubled the cost of our trip. So yeah, I'm sorry if it turned a bit dark towards the end, but I think that is it for our food vlog. Hopefully this gives you a very comprehensive view, mainly of Rome, and also a little bit on Noto and very little on Palermo.
And also some tips for you.
Yeah, ultimately stay diligent and enjoy your trip in Italy. It is a fun place, and they do have pretty good food if you know where to look. So hopefully you enjoyed this food vlog. Hopefully it has provided some form of value to you, fellow traveler. If you enjoyed it, consider giving us a thumbs up. If you've yet to subscribe, do consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell button. And because now we have to figure out a way to purchase back another camera, if it is possible, you know, if you enjoyed our content, please like, comment, share with your friends. Because the only way we make money is through YouTube advertisement. We don't do any sponsored products. So yeah, that will really help us a lot. So I think that's it. We are heading back. This is the final episode. Let's see whether we meet in another country next week. Bye.